I'm never having it again.
I mean, that's what I love about it, though. You're like, boy, this sure is hard. And it tastes like shit. And you kept it in your mouth. Hello and welcome back to Hindsight is 50/50. This is episode 11. I am your host, J-Rod, with my co-host, the ORG old retired guy. Dad, how you doing?
I'm doing really good, Jared. Really good. You know, the weather's started to turn, obviously, which I'm not a huge fan of winter the older I get, but on a day like Saturday when
Shit starts hurting.
When there's good college football on, and we've got supplies and I've got, dry firewood stored. I had a fire in the fireplace all day, and your mom and I watched college football until we couldn't watch it anymore. So
there's a lot worse things than a cozy fire and good football.
Well, and then, how Michigan weather is. I mean, it was just Thursday. I was in a long sleeve T-shirt riding a motorcycle through the Irish Hills because it was 75.
I was going to say, I was outside with the kids at the park, shorts, T-shirt, 75 degrees, and it's like the next day, or 2 days later, it's like 28 and snowing.
Oh yeah, we actually had snow on the deck. One of the games that we're going to talk about a little bit, in Little Rock, Arkansas, there was ice on the field, like sleet, and they didn't know what to do with it. So they started shoveling it, because they didn't have a machine. And they're not used to dealing with it. And they're playing LSU Saturday at noon. And it's like they're scraping it off with shovels, and that's going slow. So they sprayed it with water, and that made it worse. No. That made it worse. Well, fortunately, the sun was out, and the sun kind of took it away. The sun saved them. Even though I want to say at game time it was 34 or 36 degrees in Little Rock. That's chilly, bub.
That's like when you see on the news, it's like, in Florida has an 1/8 of an inch of snow and all schools are closed. And you're sitting here in Michigan, like, there's 3.5 feet, and if your bus can't make it, we expect you to walk. Good luck.
Yep.
Well, anyways, on the topic of sports, one of my buddies, Brian, he goes by, in our gaming realm, he goes by the handle of Big Dog, and that's what everybody calls him. Big Dog brought up a topic about the Bruins and how they signed a 20-year-old defenseman, and there's a lot of controversy around it. And so that was something that, he brought it up, he brought it to our attention, wanted to know if we'd take a look at it or if it was something we talk about. And after reviewing an article that you had sent me, it's quite the interesting topic, to be honest. I don't know if you want to elaborate more on that or if you want me to, kind of just lay the groundwork from the article.
Well, and I think it's fine to do that, but I also think we need to say this is an article, this is, everything's hearsay at this point. And we're going by what we're reading being the truth.
Yes, we do not have all the facts. It is clearly our opinions based off of the report.
Yeah, if you want to frame it up, and I'll jump in because and thanks to Big Dog, because I had heard about this on a local radio station. I had heard them talk about this briefly, and then when you mentioned that he had mentioned it, then I started doing a little bit more research, and so far the reports that I've heard and read are very similar, if not the same. But again, we don't know that this is true, but please go ahead and frame it up.
So this is an article from Bleacher Report, and this is Bruins Mitchell Miller won't play in the NHL until bullying conviction probed. That's the title of the article. The article goes on and speaks about the actions that he committed, and it says Miller was a 4th-round pick of the Arizona Coyotes in the 2020 draft. The Coyotes The Coyotes renounced his rights in October 2020 after the Arizona Republic reported details from a 2016 conviction of assaulting and bullying a black classmate with developmental disabilities in Ohio as a juvenile. Miller later comes out to apologize, to address what had happened, and just kind of states what his actions were in a very gloss over way. He says, "When I was in 8th grade, I made an extremely poor decision and acted very immaturely. I bullied one of my classmates. I deeply regret the incident and have apologized to the individual. Since the incident, I have come to better understand the far-reaching consequences of my actions that I failed to recognize and understand nearly 7 years ago. I strive to be a better person and positively contribute to society. As a member of the Bruins organization, I will continue to participate in community programs to both educate myself and share my mistakes with others to show what negative impact those actions can have on others. To be clear, what I did when I was 14 years old was wrong and unacceptable. There is no place in this world for being disrespectful to others, and I pledge to use this opportunity to speak out against mistreating others." That's his apology. Unfortunately, the article goes on to say that this wasn't his only behavior of that manner. So it says,
with that kid.
Yes.
It wasn't a one-time incident with the kid, according to what I read. I mean, this happened with that kid repeatedly.
It was previously described as a pattern of assault, bullying, and the use of racist terms, including brownie and the N-word, by Miller while they were classmates, and this account was verified by other students according to the Arizona Republic. Then, from the victim himself, "He pretended to be my friend and made me do things I didn't want to do. In junior high, I got beat up by him. Everyone thinks he's so cool he gets to go to the NHL, but I don't see how someone can be cool when you pick on someone and bully someone your entire life." So I just wanted to gloss over, but I know that there was a very heinous act that was in that article that you read as well as I did. And I thought we should talk about that. I just wanted to lay the groundwork so everyone knows kind of the conviction, the reason for it, the apology, and an account from the victim themselves. But now you and I can kind of talk about not only the right and wrong of it, but also, what happened. So,
well,
go ahead.
From an old man perspective, I can't decide whether it makes me sick to my stomach or it makes my blood boil or both. I have, and I think all of us find as we get older, and if you don't have it when you have kids, trust me, you'll have it even more when you have grandkids. If I heard of or saw anybody picking or physically abusing any of my grandkids, you guys are younger and faster than me, and so likely you would get there before me to deal with it, but I guarantee I'd get there. And whether it was through administrative means, through legal processes, or grabbing somebody by the shirt collar and putting my foot in their behind, we'd be dealing with this right away.
Well, and there's a rough part of this that's the inexcusable, disgusting part of this article that highlights one of the issues. And if someone gets the shit kicked out of them, you don't know if they were running their mouth all day or both sides of the story. But regardless, when you're starting to pick on someone with special needs or developmental learning issue, whatever it's called, you're crossing a line that you just don't cross. But this went a step further, in my opinion. One of the paragraphs in the article says, in one instance, Miller, who's the defenseman that was signed by the Bruins. Miller and another student allegedly wiped a piece of candy on a urinal before tricking this disabled kid into licking it.
So it looked like feces on the urinal,
Yeah.
and they made him lick it.
Yeah. When they say tricked, we know damn well it wasn't a trick. This was force, right? I mean, that's you'd have to assume. So that part, to me, is where, and again, this is my opinion, but it becomes more malicious because as a kid growing up, you're gonna have a temper, you're gonna get frustrated, and although there's no right to ever pick on someone who has special needs, I could see someone losing their temper, especially when someone's being catered to more than them. And I would be like, that's not cool that you did it, but I understand how it happens. But when you get to this point where you're trying to make this kid think he's licking shit off of a urinal, that's messed up. And
it is.
I
mean, I struggle with a few things, and I struggle mightily with them. And I, even at 67 years old, I have to restrain myself over things like this. I don't believe in that. I don't. I know the kid was 14, and I'm not trying to persecute that kid. But that kind of thing, a man physically putting his hands on a woman, I'm not about that, and that bothers me a lot when I see that happening. But anything that involves children, and whether it's misuse, abuse, just over the top heckling, whatever it is, um, I get infuriated by it. Like I said, I think the biggest problem here is the Boston Bruins. You know, you knew of this, and yet because he does appear to have a future in the National Hockey League, you were trying to get this by on the down low.
It did say in that article that they spent time with him for several weeks to see who he was as a human being now. So I think that makes it seem. I still think they tried to sign him on the down low and get away with it because they knew the PR would be bad. But I do think that the fact that you spent time to evaluate him, if you genuinely did that, I think that makes it somewhat more acceptable. So I kind of have two views on this. As a parent, fuck that kid. Bury him, ruin his life. Like if I was the parent of the kid who he picked on. And that's just how passionate I would have been. But as a member of society who believes in rehabilitation over relentless punishment, I truthfully believe if you can find a way to structure it in his contract to where he has, some type of like performance improvement plan or something where he is continuously obligated to bring awareness to this and help teach others or get involved with a charity. It's like the financial means that he will gain from the NHL will cause more good than the harm that he did to the student. And so in that case, one, him being 14, we typically don't ruin minors' entire lives over their mistakes when they were kids. But two, he will have the opportunity to make things better, and it never will excuse what he did, and it will never make that okay, but it will stop a lot of other people from having to go through it.
This is why I think this thing, and it shouldn't be minimized, and I'm not trying to minimize it. I just think the Boston Bruins could have made themselves look a lot better had they come out and said, "Hey, we want to sign this kid. This happened. This is what he's done this is what he's been doing to, reconcile that." and to rehab himself. These are the
Yeah,
things that he's
publicly
going to
address it.
continue. These are things that he's going to continue to do. And you put that out front. I mean, we've got a guy who committed an egregious act, multiple egregious acts, it sounds like, when he was 14. And like you said, there's part of me, I don't want to ruin his life over that, but I also want to make sure he's not going to do it again and he never wants to pay, or he's going to have to pay, is what I guess I want to say.
Well, and you can turn him into a role model. And I
Yes.
think people at times think a role model has to be someone who's always good, and that's not the case. You're going to get a guy who has learned, the fundamental differences of right and wrong and what's acceptable. And now, as a popular athlete with money that kids are going to look up to, you can have him preach and teach about his wrongdoings to make sure it doesn't happen to kids in the future.
Well,
I mean,
you've got
go ahead.
in professional sports, the commissioner of the major 4 professional sports is almost always the most unpopular guy in the building. Roger Goodell in football, Rob Manfred in baseball, Gary Bettman in hockey is probably the leader of the band as far as being unpopular. And then you got that Adam Silver, who might be the most popular of all the commissioners. He seems to work with the players and the union very well. But when the Bruins are going to do this, and Gary Bettman, who works for all the owners, people forget that. These guys are very highly paid, sort of puppets. They have to represent what the vast majority of the ownership wants them to do. And so many times that's unpopular, and they take a lot of bullets for those, whether it be 28 or 32 or 30 owners. They take a lot of bullets for those guys, but Gary Bettman stood up and said, wait just a minute. This isn't happening until everything is vetted. There's a full investigation. And as unpopular as Gary Bettman is, I applaud him greatly for standing up and doing that. But I have no doubt that the way the Bruins approached it, it was becoming a real embarrassment. And they wanted to do as much damage control as they could, which I think had they been proactive in that damage control, they would have been much better off. Transparent.
Yeah, I thought the commissioner of the NHL also did a really good job at pointing out the kind of the separation in the league as well. So, this kid who was signed can't play in the NHL, but in theory, he can play in their minor league teams. But that's part of the American Hockey League. And so he deferred that to the commissioner of that league, just publicly stating like, hey, till this is all figured out, I'm not going to let him play. But if he plays in a different league, that's a different guy. Don't
Don't
shit on the
bylaws,
NHL.
their rules.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I did appreciate him doing that. But as far as it goes to the player, I kind of look at this like the Mike Vick situation, and I know they're totally different when Mike Vick was fighting dogs, and this is bullying and abuse, but they're both despicable crimes. And Mike Vick went to prison and came back a fairly model citizen, and actually, in my opinion, is one of the most reformed people I think I've seen at that level. He seems genuine and he seems wiser, and like he learned from his mistakes, and that going to prison was probably the best thing that could have happened to him. And I think he actually says those words himself. But I kind of view his situation similar to this kid, as to where I'm not going to ruin your career, but your reputation's ruined. And so like for Mike Vick, he's going to always be a part of those dog charities and those foundations, and he's going to pay his penance forever. But he was allowed to come back after his time was served, and now he's doing more good than the harm he did. And with this kid, I think it's the exact same way. You're always going to be that guy who did this. And we don't think we have to help you sweep it under the rug.
But you can
But
reinvent
you can
yourself, which is what
exactly,
Mike Vick did that.
and you can
he
do
did.
your best. But
Yeah.
but you know, you're the one who tarnished your reputation. We're not going to piss away your career on that. But again, we're not going to piss it away as long as you're doing more good than the harm you did. And I think that needs
I'm
to
with
be
you
included.
100%. I hope that I never have to experience this kind of thing and react with my grandkids, because it would be extremely difficult for me to be composed. I think and you remember, and it wasn't about, well, I guess your brother got bullied by a certain kid, got bullied. I don't remember you getting bullied. I remember you having certain issues, and I was never afraid to go meet with the administrators and sit down with my questions already written out on a notepad and look them right in the eye and get answers to my questions. That was the process. Like I said, the little kid thing and the children thing, and I know he was in junior high. He wasn't a toddler. But then you throw in I don't know if it's special needs or what it is. I've heard it, learning disabilities. I'm not
We're not
hip
going to
on
get
all
all the
those
political
definitions,
correct
okay?
terms right. Yeah,
It,
that's fair.
we say special needs, but maybe that's a different thing. I don't know. But when you throw that in there, it just adds more salt in the wound, and it makes it all that much more despicable.
What's hitting a defenseless player?
Yeah.
Let's-
And so I'm with you. He's never going to forget this. He can rebuild himself, but they're never going to forget that he did this.
He can rebuild himself with this as a part of his foundation.
Yeah. Yeah. And it better be. That's how he's going to rebuild himself. And supposedly, in reading that letter, which I'm sure an attorney wrote, but I'm also sure that, there are real truths that are in that letter. If he's going to do those things and speak out against bullying, et cetera, and do all of the things that he says he's going to do, that's how he can rebuild himself. And I don't want him to be banned for life.
No, and there's no better spokesperson.
Make sure he pays for it too.
But there's no better spokesperson in my mind. It's just like you and I can talk about, like, hey, kids, don't do drugs. But it's when an addict, a former addict, speaks out about how it destroys your life, that starts to sink in with the audience. And it's like,
Right.
as someone who will be forced to learn from his mistakes and forced to talk about it, knowing the embarrassment he caused himself and his family, as well as the pain that he caused on another individual, I don't think there's a better spokesperson for it, because he's done it.
I would
firsthand.
agree. I would agree. And because of his profession, he's going to have a platform to do it.
And he's also going to have people trying to take his fucking head off on the ice. You know that's going to happen. Somebody's going to be like, my cousin's special needs, and beat his ass.
I mean,
that's
they
gonna
always
happen.
say, and I wouldn't know, but you always hear this, that if a child molester, and I know that's not the same as this, I'm not saying that, but when a child molester goes to prison, if it's not a maximum, or if whether it is or isn't a maximum security prison, that guy better watch his behind, because, and I mean that literally and figuratively, because even convicts don't like child molesters.
That's what happened with Dahmer.
Yeah,
I mean, like, I just watched the Dahmer series, and he, one of his victims, he assaulted a young boy, from another race, assaulted and murdered, and one of the guys that was on the cleaning crew with him picked up a dumbbell and crushed his skull. And it's just like, you're getting what's coming, man. Like,
well, yeah, and again, I don't want to ruin this kid's career, but I want to make sure he pays for it. And he learns from it. And guess what? If he can help other people learn, that's part of his penance.
And we need it.
I'm all about it.
Like, as a parent with 2 young children, it is incredibly frightening to think about what I'm raising my children into. Not the men they will become, but what they will have to deal with. You've got a society motivated by racial issues. You've got them motivated or fueled by gender and identity issues, and you're having this brought into the school systems where they're learning these different ideologies, devaluing potentially a parent's core values depending on what your belief is. And you've got the different bathrooms things and dealing with the trans issues and potentially having like a boy in with your daughter in a bathroom. And you've got all these frightening things stacked on top of kids being kids, making stupid choices, drugs, all of that stuff that's going to come in every single generation. And to think that we've still got to deal with the older pranks, harassment, fights, swirlies, the candy bar on the urinal. I had never heard of that one before, but it almost sounds like an older school harassment prank. And it's like, we're creating an environment in which it's damn near impossible for these kids to survive. And I don't know how the hell they're going to survive and not be fucked up coming out of it.
I say this to comfort you. And because I mean this and I believe it. I know the circumstances are dramatically different, but every parent who is worth their weight has worried about the welfare of their children in the society in which they live, going back to George Washington. And I know the problems are different now. I know that. All I'm saying is every parent who is a loving parent is always concerned about that, Jared. So maybe the problems, maybe they're different. Maybe there's a lot more. I'm not saying they're less or anything like that.
That's my fear right there.
I'm just saying all parents worry about that. So
my fear is the total
you're not
number.
alone.
It's I think of it just like school. It's like, there's always been math, science, and history, but there's always been more math, more science, and more history throughout the decades. And so it's like every time a different generation comes up, there is more to learn. Now, whether they learn it or not, that's up to them. But now, that is my fear raising kids, is it's like, it's not that we can't handle the modern problems. It's, are we handling all of the problems plus the modern problems? Is it just becoming more and more and more, to which point you go, I mean, are we even giving these kids a fair chance?
Well, I get what you're saying, but like I said, I think every parent that's worth anything, that's a good parent, has been concerned about that going back to the beginning of time. I mean, Abraham Lincoln has a short speech, and I used to have it on my wall at the office, and it was about that. It was about that. It was about worrying about your kids. And when you read it, like so many things he said, if you didn't know his name was on it, somebody could have said that yesterday. It was that profound.
Timeless. Yeah.
And it was that generic as far as worrying about the future of our children. And it literally could have been written yesterday, because it wasn't, he didn't date it by saying anything specifically. It was just concern about the youth of America and about how we ought to pay attention to them. And I'll try to find that and get it to you, because it's
good to know that everyone worries and I don't have to feel crazy, but here's to hoping.
Yeah.
But on a brighter note, I know this was all kind of dark, but Dad, you said you had an interesting story to share at the dollar store. Is that correct?
Yeah, and thanks again to Big Dog for bringing that up.
Yeah,
And
thanks, Big.
and we'd like to, if you have comments about any of this stuff, I know Jared encourages people to do that, but I would too. We need your comments. We need your feedback. The dollar store jerky story. Okay. When you get to be a senior citizen, you become familiar with the phrase senior moments. It's you had a senior moment. And you do them all the time. Sometimes it's muscle memory, sometimes it's silly little stuff. That's like, for example, one that I do. I use paper plates a lot. Okay. We have a specific cabinet where paper plates are. There's other things in there too, in that one cabinet, like napkins and I don't know, on the upper shelf, there's some rice or whatever. There's some, soft goods up in there. But every time I open that cupboard door, even if I don't want a paper plate, if I'm getting a napkin, I also grab a paper plate. It's just like it's like muscle memory. That's a senior moment, okay? Somebody who's 32 just says, I just did something dumb. But that's what we call senior moment. So I'm at the dollar store, our little dollar store in Manchester, Michigan, the other day. I'm picking up a few things. Well, I want to get our 14-year-old dog, Max, a special treat. I mean, he has dog treats, and we give him treats for doing anything. And he's not grossly overweight. He's still fairly active.
Super
But
fit.
he gets treats for doing everything. But when I have a mission in mind when I get him this special treat. I can't eat a lot of beef jerky, but I love beef jerky. So what I'll do is I'll grab a pack of regular beef jerky, whether it's Jack Link's or, whatever the major brands are. And I'll grab a bag of that. And what I'll usually do is on the way home, I'll open that and I'll eat a small piece. And that's the only one I get. The rest of that is to give to Max as treats. So a bag might last 3 or 4 days, maybe even a week, because we don't just give him that. We rotate treats, So I'm in the dollar store and I see this buffalo jerky. And our dollar store is packed. I mean, packed. There's no room for any more storage of goods in there. I mean, it is packed. You could barely walk down the aisles. It's so packed. So on one of these end caps at the end of the aisle, I see buffalo jerky. So I grab it. I had to make another stop. So on the way to the truck, I open up that jerky. I grab a piece out. I put it in the bag in the back seat. And I'm off to do whatever else I was doing. I put that thing in my mouth. It was hard as a rock. And I mean, it had no flavor. I mean, none. And I'm sitting there and I'm trying to wet it in my mouth to soften it up. Because I mean, this thing's like a rock.
It's like a fucking jawbreaker.
Yeah. And it had no flavor. And I'm going, man, this crap is old. And I tried all the way home to soften that up enough to chew it. And I couldn't. And I finally, on our little country road, I just tossed it. I tossed it out. I mean, hopefully it's biodegradable.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah. I mean, some vulture pick it up and spit it out probably.
Yeah.
So I get home and I have not told anybody this. So your mom's going to get a kick out of listening to this too. I get it home and I until this moment, I have not told anybody this. I get it home. I unpack the stuff that I've got from town. It was dog jerky. It was buffalo dog jerky. I mean, Jared, It was in big pieces, and for Max to eat it, I had to cut it with a hacksaw.
Oh my! I mean, that's so funny. You're just saying, "Goddamn, this is tough as hell."
Oh my, and no flavor, man. It was like there's something wrong with this jerky. It was dog jerky. So
That's too good.
that was well, I know, and your mom's gonna die. Because I mean, I brought the package in, and I mean, we gave it to Max over time. I think there might be a piece left because he couldn't handle a big piece
no
of it.
shit. Max is over there like, this is hard as well.
Oh yeah, like a couple times he just gave up, you know. But
and you're sitting there in the car, just like rolling it around in your mouth.
oh
like,
yeah, I'm going, man. What the hell is wrong with this jerky, man? It doesn't even taste very good. Yeah. So, but I mean, it was in these giant strips too.
I can't breathe.
And you couldn't break them. I took the bigger pieces out, put them in a vise, and cut them with a hacksaw,
Oh my god!
so Max could eat them. So,
what was your reaction when you
so
saw the bag?
that's my scene. That's my highlighted senior moment lately. Trust me, more to come. Well, I knew it was funny. I didn't think you were gonna die on me.
Oh my god!
When your mom listens to this, that will be the first time she's heard it, and I tell her everything. But I just put the bag in the drawer with the treats, and I acted like nothing happened. I wasn't gonna tell her.
What was your reaction when you reached in the back of the car and you saw it? You're like, "Oh, for fuck's sake!"
It pretty much. And it's like, okay, I'm not telling anybody I did that. Yeah, buddy. So,
Yummy.
oh, so bad. So bad. And
Oh
there
my
was,
goodness!
man,
I got tears running down my face.
it was so bad. I told you I had a good dollar store jerky story. That was it.
That's so priceless. What in the hell is wrong with this jerky?
Well, I swear it's true.
Yeah. Oh, I believe it.
Dude, why would I make that up?
Sometimes I like to make up stories about tasting dog treats.
Nope.
Oh,
goodness.
man. That is
yeah,
a
man.
great story.
It's just the whole thing.
Yummy.
I'm not kidding you. Mason, and you know he's got the jaws of hell.
Yeah.
Mason would struggle with this jerky.
Oh, I believe it.
I kid you not. And an old man was not making any progress
The
at
fact
all.
that you kept it in your mouth for more than 2 seconds and we're like, what the fuck is that?
Dude, I had it in my mouth for 10 minutes. Trying to figure out, is it ever going to soften up?
I'm just going to start showing up on the holidays to your house and be like, Dad, dog treat?
It's all true, man. I'm embarrassed to say that it's true, but yeah, that was my senior moment. I should have paid more attention.
That reminds me when Mom got something for her mom, Grandma Scully, for Christmas, and she had put it in those that peanut butter cup box for like Weight Watchers.
Yes.
The gift was inside the box, and Grandma never opened it. She's just like, "Oh, I love these." It's like, that's not your gift.
I remember.
Oh goodness. Oh, Dad, that's a new one.
Man. Takes
Well,
takes guts to admit
yeah,
crap like that because
that's one of those. Go
as
ahead.
it stands, um, nobody no nobody would have known.
Oh, oh man. That is one hell of a story. There are other stories. There's one I'm going to reference, but I won't tell right now. But it reminds me of Joe and the cat kibble, and we'll share that another time. But that honestly, thank you. That made my day so much better.
Well, I'm
Oh,
glad.
tasty.
I really am. I mean, dude,
Mm.
I need to laugh too. I laugh every day, and if that made you laugh and makes other people chuckle, because I swear to you, that is 100% true, all the way down to the hacksaw. That is true. That is all true.
I
But I'm glad it
just
tickled
wish
you.
I could have been there in the car with you.
Oh, dude. Well, I could have offered you some. I would have. I
Yeah,
know
no,
you like
what the
jerky.
fuck is wrong with you?
Well, you would have probably given up a lot earlier than I did.
Certainly.
Yeah, it was not good. It didn't even taste good. But I'm thinking, well,
That's
it's
what
a
I love
different
about it,
brand. I
though.
haven't had this, and yeah, I'm never having it again.
I mean, that's what I love about it, though. You're like, boy, this sure is hard. And it tastes like shit. And you kept it in your mouth.
I was trying to give it a full opportunity to redeem itself, and it
Yeah.
never did.
Boy, this shitty stuff, it really doesn't taste good. Oh.
Classic senior moment, Bubba.
Oh
I
my
tell
god,
you.
we gotta get a
Again,
picture. You gotta send me a picture so I can put it on
who
there.
would admit that? Who would even make that up and pretend it's true? You wouldn't. But I tell
And
it
you would be doing a
100%.
disservice to all of us. If you didn't tell us that, you'd be doing everybody a disservice. That is one hell of a story.
Well, I appreciate that. And after lightening the mood, I want to we've got some college football to talk about.
Yes, absolutely. Some good college football this past weekend.
First off, just want to talk about Jim Mora, and you have him listed, and I think I told you it's Jim Mora Jr. It's not. It's Jim Mora. I think he is Jim R or Jim L Mora, and his dad is either R or L, but they're
At
not.
the
It's not
inverse.
senior and junior. There's just Jim L Mora, and Jim R Mora. Now, Jim Mora, the young Jim Mora, who's still actively coaches at UConn. He has coached in his past. Because his dad was a really good coach with the Saints and a really good coach with the Colts. And he got old, and I think things got stale, and he eventually retired, and that's okay. He did it, but he did a lot of good work as a coach. And then the son, Jim, was an assistant, I'm sure, at places. I know he coached the Atlanta Falcons for a period of time, was the head coach. And he also coached the Seattle Seahawks for a while. Well, those didn't work out. I know he went to UCLA. Well, for a long time, it hadn't been easy to win at UCLA. I mean, you got USC and then Oregon coming up. And when Utah joined that league, it got tougher because that Kyle Whittingham's a really good coach and they're good every year. They're at least good. So, I mean, it wasn't easy for him at UCLA, and he lasted there a few years. And then he was a commentator on pregame shows for college, I think, for a year or two. Well, UConn football, I mean, UConn's put guys in the league, you know, not a ton, but they do. And, they had a coach there who had a lot of success. His name was Randy Edsall. Well, for years and years, he did a pretty good job there. And UConn had good teams. He left to go to Maryland, and to me, that was a lateral move. Maybe the money was a big difference. I don't know, but he went to go to Maryland, and it did not work. Then Randy Edsall bounced around. He was an assistant for the Lions. I know at one time he was a special assistant of sorts with one of the Lions regimes. Well, UConn did with him basically what Rutgers did with Greg Schiano. Schiano left, coached a few places, then came back. UConn did the same with Randy Edsall, and they bring him back, and he failed miserably. It was just really bad. So Jim Mora's out there, the young Jim Mora. They hired Jim Mora. I'm not sure if this is his first or second year. I think it's his first. And in Michigan's second game of the year at the Big House, they beat UConn 59-0, and it could have been worse. And I mean, after the game, Jim Mora said he goes, all due respect to Michigan, that's a really good football team. Very polite, eloquent guy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I look up and I see them win a game or two. And then I see them win a game or two more. This is this year. Last week, they beat Liberty. And I think the year before that, they beat Boston College. Well, Boston College isn't anything special, but they can be a tough out. They usually play teams tough, and UConn beat them. Then UConn beat Liberty, who the week prior had beaten Arkansas. And Liberty, who's coached by Hugh Freeze, the guy who had the scandal at Ole Miss and got run out. Well, all of a sudden, now you're hearing about Liberty, and Malik Willis, the quarterback for Liberty, was drafted last year. He plays for the Titans now. So they beat UConn under Jim Mora, beats Liberty last week. They're 5-5. They're bowl eligible. Now that's a team I saw lose 55-0, and it could have been, or 59-0, and it could have been 80-0. That is one hell of a coaching job, man.
Couldn't have been worse than the dog treat, though.
You're gonna keep going back to that,
aren't you? I've been trying to hold it together. So priceless. Oh god. But that sounds like that coach has done a hell of a job then. Honestly, I'm not trying to take away from what you're saying. That sounds like he's done a remarkable job, and it sounds like they're lucky to have him.
Again, I give him credit, man. I give him credit. That was a beatdown, and I could look up their scores, for the year, but they've had a few of those, especially early. Michigan wasn't the only team that spanked them good. And then to come back and in the same year, all of a sudden you're bowl eligible. I mean, that is one hell of a coaching job. And when a guy does something like that, I think he deserves credit. So that's my Jim Mora thing. I know we had on our list to talk about LSU.
Yeah.
LSU played Arkansas. This is after their big win over Alabama. And you and I have talked about this. I think it was a hangover game. They were so amped up after all that. And it was a huge win against Bama, no doubt. And I mean, in Little Rock, the field is covered with like ice and sleet and kind of snow. Not deep, but it's on the field. You couldn't see the lines on the field. And guys are out there with shovels pregame because it's only like 34 or 35 degrees, trying to clear off at least the lines because they got no machine. They it's Little Rock, Arkansas. They don't have like a Zamboni or a street vac to pick it up. And so then somebody gets the bright idea they'll put water on it.
Yeah.
And that made it worse.
Freezing temperatures and water, no shit.
Fortunately, the sun came out. It got that, and I don't even think the kickoff was delayed. It was a noon kickoff. But the sun came out and saved everybody's bacon because it did melt away. But it was comical to watch them do that. And then, because obviously that much snow, we don't even do anything with it.
Right? You go, no, it's not really snowing.
Yeah, I don't even shovel my walk for that much snow.
Well, that's what cracks me up is like you hear about these, whether it's a city's infrastructure or whatever, that's ill prepared to handle the weather. And it's like this can't be the first time it's ever snowed there. So it's like, did last time you go, well, that sucked. Hope it doesn't happen again. Like, no
Alan
plan?
told me one time, this was when they had the first Super Bowl at Jerry World. It snowed that week in Dallas. And it doesn't snow in Dallas very often. And if it does, it's usually gone by noon, like it was in Arkansas. So he has to go to the airport to pick somebody up. And there's like this wet snow on the ground. And guys, because they don't have any snow removal equipment, they're pulling no parking signs out of the ground and laying them on the ground and using the sign to scoot the snow and pile it. No, that's not high-tech snow removal equipment, Bubba. But, they didn't even have shovels. In Arkansas, they had shovels, but it was going to take them a week, because, you got two guys out there with shovels just trying to show the lines. Anyway, in that game, which LSU won the game, and I think it was 13-10, and clearly they were having a hangover. This kid from LSU, he's a true freshman. His name's Harold Perkins. He's number 40. I think in that game he had 5 sacks.
Jesus.
And he had 2 forced fumbles. Now, the quarterback for Arkansas, their first string guy was hurt. Their backup is a kid named Hornsby, who he ran the anchor leg on the 4x100 on the fastest team in America. So he's that fast, and that's their quarterback. He clearly likes to run. This Perkins kid caught him from behind twice running across the field. And he's a linebacker. And the announcers kept saying, he really doesn't even know how to play the position yet. He's just, they made him a spy on this Hornsby, on this quarterback. And that's what he did. And I mean, he was outstanding against Alabama. This game was 10 times that. I mean, it was crazy to watch him. You're going to know who he reminds me of. And if he learns the position, he's going to be all him and more. And he also played at LSU.
White?
Yep.
Devin White?
Devin White, who's
He's
about as good as
kind of side-to-side speed, because that's incredible.
I'm not kidding you. This kid's got all that in a bag of chips. And now,
Devin White might be the fastest linebacker I've ever seen. Like that.
Wait till you see this kid play.
Speed.
Wait till you pay attention to him play. He is he's running down the anchor leg of the fastest relay team in the United States. And he ran him down twice.
He gets up and turns around and goes, what the fuck just happened?
Literally. Who in the hell just caught me?
Yeah, that's like when Megatron was having the Calvin Johnson for the Detroit Lions was having that record-breaking season, and he caught a pass on like a skinny post, and he gets tackled from behind. And Stafford goes, "Who the hell caught you?" Like, it's just like you never would expect it to happen. I'm sure that quarterback that had to have messed with his confidence, knowing that someone could run him down.
Well, I tell you, I don't even think the announcers knew what to say. Because, I mean, this Hornsby kid is clearly fast. And I don't even think the announcers knew how to describe it. It was just like, oh. And he did it twice. And Hornsby was not impeded. He was running to the sideline, and Perkins was behind him. And he didn't even have an angle on him. And he caught him twice. it was amazing to watch this kid. If he keeps his head on straight and truly learns the position, he is one hellacious athlete.
So is he just pure raw talent, or does he have very good instinct with raw talent, but he needs to focus on the fundamentals?
I think instincts too. I do. I think he has good football instincts, but you can't get away with being out of position all the time. Sometimes you can just on sheer athleticism. And I think that's what they were talking about with him. When he truly learns how to make the reads, when he truly learns how to call defenses, which I have no doubt he will. He's 8, or he might be 19 if he just turned, but he is a true freshman. And I mean, holy cow.
You got to get that kid in front of the jugs machine, though, because it's like with speed like that, I mean, he could be sitting in a zone and get a lot of picks in college football. If you got that kind of speed and he's got decent hands, that's a pick six machine.
No, he's amazing. And I'm not gonna. I want to say he's around 230, maybe 228 right now.
Jesus.
Yeah,
and he's that fast.
Oh, dude,
he's gonna kill someone.
It looks like a video game that where you pump up a player to be 10 times better than everybody else,
like Derrick Henry,
or faster.
Like Derrick Henry, straight out of a video game.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, he's like fired out of a cannon.
Derrick Henry is the definition of a Madden player. Like, he looks like someone created him in a video game. I don't understand how people are built like that. And if this kid's similar, obviously in his own way, but built like a video game, it's just, I mean, they're such freaks of nature. It's incredible and it's fun to watch. Was his containment a huge part in the win over Alabama?
He had splash plays against Bama. He had a lot more of them against Arkansas. I'm not sure he played as many snaps. I'd have to look against Alabama because they were using him situationally. And again, I think that's because he doesn't necessarily know 100% how to play the position.
Right, and if Bama beats your technique, they'll gash you.
And we talk about LSU always having athletes. Man, do they ever? And this guy's another one in a long line. And is he fun to watch? And I just, I tell your mom this all the time when we're watching two good teams, and a lot of times it's SEC teams. Not always, but a lot of times. And I just say, you can't even imagine the talent that's on that field. I remember this. I used to keep a book. Sometimes I'd keep the book. Sometimes I'd announce high school games. Sometimes I'd keep the tackle book and all that on the sideline. And it made me uncomfortable, seeing what was going on the field. Because, I mean, it's when you're a dad and you're in your 40s, that can get pretty scary. And then when for one reason, and I remember you guys were little guys and you were ball boys at Kalamazoo College when Jacob played. And I had one occasion to be down on the sidelines, close to the action. Oh, man. It's like, you keep your head on a swivel. I don't want to get hit by that mess. Because it's big guys with bad intentions, and they're not Big Ten guys or SEC guys playing in Division III, but they're big guys with bad intentions, and they got the same drive. They might not have the 40 time, and instead of being 240, they might be 218. But
a lot of times they're bigger and not as fast, too.
They still mean business.
But I tell Melissa this all the time. I go, I think people at times forget that, like, those are human beings on the field. Like, this isn't, you're not watching a simulation. And I understand people don't have that thought, but it's like, that person's got, I don't know, 12 pounds of gear or something on their body. and they have been trained to run as fast as they can and collide with another person doing the exact same thing. And it's like, okay, you say that one time and it's a little bit like, whoa, that's kind of sketch. After a while, it becomes frightening because you know this person has been doing it for years. So it's like they're cracking oxygen. They're not out of gas. They're running at full speed. They're stronger than the average human being, faster than the average human being, and they have bad intentions, like you said. And it's like when that happens and two people with the same drive collide on the field, or 22 people do that, there's something when you're super close to it and you can like feel the ground shake, you can appreciate how much freakish force is involved in the sport. I mean, and I think that's all sports. You could say it's hockey. When people collide, they're moving at such speed, it's frightening. When you get down there and you get to experience it firsthand, it's truly incredible what these people have pushed their bodies to be able to do.
They had they were doing an interview with I believe his name's Mark Mayer. He's a tight end for Notre Dame. And he was in warm-up clothes, no pads. This was before the game, and they're doing an interview with him. And he's one of the better tight ends in the country. When we were talking about tight ends last week, his name didn't come up, and it should, because he is one of the better tight ends in the country. But he's walking around in a T-shirt and jogging pants, It's like, this is one big dude. He is 6'5.5". He's 200, and he said, well, today I'm about 263 pounds. Because they ask him. Now, your brother still lifts. Your brother is, I don't know, 6'1", 6'2". And he is a big looking dude. This guy is Jacob's build, only 6'5.5". And I mean, and he plays a skill position. he's a tight end.
Mm-hmm.
This Perkins guy, he's no little man. And he's like, if he's not the fastest guy on the field, he sure looked like it Saturday. It's like,
what is it?
said,
Mass times velocity equals force. You're saying he's 230 pounds and the fastest guy on the field. He's gonna murder someone.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's the scary part of the sport with concussions and all that. We can change the rules all we want, but we cannot put a limit on the speed in which a player can travel and the strength in which they have. With the athletes getting bigger and faster, there's going to be problems. I'm sorry, but it's going to happen.
And with, all the nutrition now, it's just amazing. I wonder, and maybe it never will reach refusal, but you look at it, and I mean, they are bigger, stronger, faster, and I would never say anything different. It is amazing to watch.
I wonder if eventually it'll be like weight classes and heights, like limits for the size of positions. Like as a lineman, you can be 6'6", 350, but you can't be 6'2", 220 at corner because you'll kill someone flying around.
Well, I remember them talking, and we know O linemen are big.
Yeah.
But they went through LSU's offensive line tackle to tackle. I think the lightest guy was 322 pounds. And the heaviest guy was pushing 350. Florida has a D lineman who weighs like 420. And he's a nose tackle. And he's, he looks heavy, but he's pretty darn effective. And he plays a lot of snaps, surprisingly. But yeah, they're just getting bigger and bigger. Now, I know we want to talk about a few more games, and so if we can, so if you don't mind, let's go ahead and move on to some of these other games real quick, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So another big loss this week was Illinois.
Yeah, they lost again. The Big Ten West is a mess. There are, well, they were ranked, and then they lost. I think they had moved up to, close to the top 10. Michigan State beat them, which kudos to Michigan State. I never thought that would happen, but it did. And then they
Right.
played Purdue. And and they played them at Champaign-Urbana again. It was a home game for them. And Purdue is one of those teams, they'll jump up and get you. They've got a 6-year quarterback who I think will play in the league. Not maybe as a front guy, but he's going to hold a clipboard somewhere. He's really smart. He's not super mobile. He doesn't like to run. He can run a little bit, but he doesn't like to. But when he gets hot, man, can that guy throw the ball? And they beat Illinois. That team could have easily beaten Penn State real early in the year. But Purdue's like that. They lost to somebody, I don't know, a week or two ago that I was shocked that they lost. And they got shut out. It was either Minnesota or Wisconsin. I don't remember. But with that Illinois loss, there's like 4 teams in the Big Ten West, maybe even more than that aren't out of it. It's like you got Illinois, Purdue, Minnesota, Iowa, and then I think Wisconsin's still in it. So if by chance, pick one of those teams, any one of those that are still not mathematically eliminated, and they win the Big Ten West. If they play in the Big Ten title game and happen to beat either Ohio State or Michigan, which I think it will likely be, the Big Ten could be out of the playoff because the winner of the West isn't going. I mean, Iowa has trouble scoring on a skeleton drill, and all those teams are, and Illinois has proven it in the last 2 weeks. I thought Illinois was really good running game, decent quarterback play, good stout defense, but there was one play in that game, and your brother Jacob and I were texting back and forth. And this guy for Purdue, this quarterback, is named Aiden O'Connell. O'Donnell or O'Connell, one of those. But he's a 6-year guy. He played in COVID, but because of COVID, you didn't have to count that year. But he played, and he didn't count it. So he's technically in his 6th year. There was a play where he did a read option. And, with him, it's always, I'm not running this thing. Well, man, the keeper broke wide open. And I told Jake, and this is all in a text. I said, you should have seen O'Donnell. After the keep on the read option breaks wide open, he ran downfield after shitting himself. He ran downfield 24 yards with his head on a swivel and then slid awkwardly. But he got a first down. But you haven't seen anybody so uncomfortable running.
This isn't where I parked my car.
You haven't seen anybody so uncomfortable running. But he got
He's
a first
looking
down,
around like,
and he
whose fucking
can throw the
football
ball.
is this?
And like I said, I think he'll play in the league.
Well,
As a backup, if nothing else.
Purdue has a lot of quarterbacks like that, though. I think like I don't know, maybe it's the engineering mindset, but once they get in rhythm, they seem to be a pretty prolific offense at times throughout the years. Now, they might not have a great season, or they might only have one athlete who carries them, but I do feel like watching them, over the past decade or so, they've had several years where they had a quarterback who it's like once he's in rhythm, he will slice and dice you. But with Illinois losing, that one to me had more implications than just the Big Ten West. It was, I think they only had 2 losses up to that point. Is that right? Before they lost to Purdue?
Yeah.
So when I looked at everything, I go, okay, the rest of the undefeateds and the 1-loss teams are on a collision course for the end of the season. And if a lot of if an undefeated team lost, if a 1-loss team took a second loss or beat an undefeated team, the whole rankings would jumble up. And if Illinois were to win out and then win the Big Ten championship, they had an opportunity to be in the hunt for the playoff, given that certain circumstances happened. But I would say that they had more than their fair share of the opportunity to happen. But with them losing now, that pulls them out, and in my opinion, makes the rest of the rankings even more of a mess because a few of the teams that were on the bubble with 2 losses picked up their third, and a couple of teams with 1 loss picked up their second. And then again, you have, like Michigan playing Ohio State at the end of the season. Georgia's going to have to play somebody in the SEC, and it really
LSU
is shaking
now.
up.
LSU won the West.
And if they keep rolling, that might be a hell of a game.
I think it could be entertaining. LSU has just continued to get better, and that quarterback has really continued to mature. He did not have a great game against Arkansas, but nobody did other than Perkins.
And the biggest thing with Georgia is there are teams that can bottle up their running game. The problem is their mismatch with their tight ends. But if you've got linebackers, like you're talking about at LSU, that can cover a tight end so they're not losing that size mismatch, that could be a hell of a matchup.
And they get pressure.
Yeah.
If they don't sack you, they at least hurry you.
And Stennett's short. I think he's a great quarterback, but he's a little dude. And it's like if you get pressure and he can't see, that changes the game.
It'll be interesting, but they clinched. Now, did you watch Bama and Ole Miss?
I watched parts of it here and there. I kept switching between games. It was much closer than I thought it would be. I knew Ole Miss was good, and I knew Bama isn't the same Bama they've always been. But this was something different. This was Ole Miss had something to prove, and in my opinion, they won every part of that game except for the score.
I was surprised. I agree with you. They had their chance. It was at home. Bama was a little bit reeling. Bama made mistakes in that game, but Ole Miss did too. Bama cut back on their penalties. They had been averaging 9. They only had 5 in that game, which that was big. But I agree with you. Ole Miss screwed the pooch. They had their chance, and I love their uniforms.
Yeah,
I'm not huge on Lane Kiffin, but I've always just had a soft spot for Ole Miss because of Archie Manning. I love.
Yeah,
Archie
I don't know
Manning
why,
when he
but
went
I've
to Ole
always
Miss.
liked them. I think it's some of the old school helmet look and all that. But the disappointment for me in that game, because I like Bama, I like Saban, and I know a lot of people don't, and that's okay. But I also like Ole Miss, and the disappointment to me in that was part of what makes games like that big each and every year is that, SEC teams have a punishing schedule and they can be punished at any point throughout the season. And in this case, when you're Ole Miss and you have Bama on the ropes, you got to get out of your own way. And when you don't, and it costs you the game from just silly little errors, silly little mistakes, boy, you might not get that for another 2 or 3 years. And that, to me, is the disheartening part of that game. It's like, if it's going to go to the very end, I want to see Ole Miss clutch up. If it's a blowout, then I'd rather see Alabama blow out Ole Miss. But when it comes to the very end of the game like it did, you just got to get out of your own way and play sound football because you have a juggernaut. Even if they're not the best team in America this year, which they've shown they're not, they are still a juggernaut. And you've got them on the ropes. It's like it's time to put them down. You don't fuck around until you lose.
Well, and the world's coming to an end in Tuscaloosa because Bama's lost 2 games. A lot of teams would be happy losing 2 games a season.
Yeah.
Many should. I know there was 7 years in Michigan football where 2 losses, I would have been grateful to only have 2. There was 7 years.
I've been grateful if we didn't have a football team for those years. My God.
Well, but you know what? It's like you said. You better get your licks while Alabama's struggling a little bit because they'll be back. They'll be back, and they're going to be in the conversation again next year.
I really do feel like Bama is a circumstance of the NIL deals where they didn't grab every single player that they normally do. And I'm not saying they didn't have a great recruiting class. I'm just saying maybe there was 10 guys that they would always get that now because of the NIL deals they didn't, or somebody transferred. So their depth was a little bit off. And now that those stars are on other teams making a name for themselves, Bama's going to reload like they always do, but they've just got to learn the new curve to the game. That's it. And so now that everyone's becoming familiar with the NIL deal, I think Bama's going to find a way to capitalize on this as well. And going back to the Illinois real quick, I think they were a circumstance of the inevitability of every season. So I do think Illinois is better than this year than they've ever been, or than they've been in recent history, I should say. But I do think they were a victim of circumstance because they came in very well coached, very sound with a very strong game. But once everyone else started picking up and weren't having the, okay, we're getting into the real games, wake up, you know, how you have like your first 3 or 4 games that are just kind of powder puff games, and then you get into the real season schedule. Once people start catching momentum, we've seen Illinois continue to lose, and it's not to discredit them, but I think people are just starting to get in full stride now. And I think, again, going back to Alabama, that they need to get into full stride with this NIL deal. I know Saban was against that shit, and I'm not. I think they do it, you know, behind closed doors anyways, but the whole point is he's got to find his stride in the new era of football. And it's like stumbling one year with 2 losses, maybe 3 at the end of the season. Boy, that's a hell of a season to have for your shittiest season.
And he will, the one thing he's proven, he will adapt. He will.
Yeah.
And so this is, you know, if you want to call this Alabama being down, and I don't, it's down for them, but it's not down.
It's Alabama not being in the top 2, right? I mean, that's what it is.
And
they're still in the top 5 and kick the shit out of most people.
This too shall pass. He will adapt. This won't last. So that's why, like you said, when you got a chance to take your shot, that Ole Miss just had their best shot they may have in a while, and they didn't do it. Now, a couple other football games I want to talk about briefly. Yep. Did you watch any of Washington, Oregon?
I did not. I didn't watch more than 10 seconds of that game.
Lots of offense in that game. Bo Nix, the quarterback who transferred from Auburn, you know, everybody loves him at Oregon, and he's had a really nice year.
We started into a different QB.
Michael Penix, who transferred from Indiana. Now, you've always said, you know, Indiana generally gives Michigan trouble, and they do. There was a couple years that was because of Michael Penix. He's a lefty, he can run some, and he can be very accurate, especially on a deep ball. Well, he was hurt all year last year. He played a lot of the year, but he wasn't right. And he transferred to Washington because he had a connection with the guy who took the head coaching job there. The guy used to be either the quarterback's coach or the OC at Indiana. Okay. So he's got a connection with him. He transferred out there. I think between the two teams, they had 900 and some yards of offense. I mean, it was up and down the field. Washington ended up winning, but, you know, now you basically have one hope, if you're the Pac-12, of getting in the playoff, and a lot of stuff has to happen for that to happen. So it was an entertaining game. Oregon, Autzen Stadium is a very tough place to play. You know, they're state rivals, you know, they're border states, so there's a big rivalry there. And it was a fun game to watch, but Washington won. You know, I was looking for TCU in Texas because right now, I think, even after tomorrow night, TCU will still be 4th in the playoff rankings, and they're unbeaten. I was thinking that, you know, Texas is going to jump up, you know, because Texas can. And I thought that game would be 45-40 or more.
Right,
It was
a barn
actually a
burner
low
for
scoring
sure.
game in Texas, and it was at Texas. And Texas didn't score an offensive touchdown. I think the final was 17-10, but Texas did what Texas does. And, you count on them, you think, well, maybe they are coming back. Maybe this, maybe that. College game day was there. It was a raucous environment. They didn't score one offensive touchdown. And so an enigma, I guess. But TCU's still in it. They're unbeaten. We'll see. Again, 2 more weeks and then conference championship games. So still a lot to be decided. Lots of great football left. I hate it because I know the end of the season's coming, but I love it because of all the excitement, and that's a
Right.
lot of fun for me.
But has Texas even been good in recent? I mean, like, I don't
In
even
my
know that I would
opinion,
say
no.
that they were that good when Vince Young was there. It's just Vince Young was that good, right?
Well,
Like, I don't know
and in
that they
my
were that good of a
opinion, I would
team.
say no. They haven't been good. They got rid of Matt Brown, and the game may have passed him by. Well, he still knows how to score points at North Carolina, and they've only got one loss. Now they play in the ACC, but they've only got one loss. But they haven't been the same since. I think because Texas is such a big brand, everybody wants them to be good. But I remember 2 years in a row, the first game of the year, they played Maryland. And Texas was getting all this preseason hype. Now, this was 3 or 4 years ago. I want to say it was when Tom Herman was the coach, that they hired away from Houston, who Houston had got from Ohio State. He was the offensive coordinator under Urban Meyer before Ryan Day. And so they bring Herman in and they think everything's going to be okay. They have all this facility, all this money. And 2 years in a row, Maryland just whacked them. And then in years where Maryland turned out to be not great, and they just whacked them. But I think everybody wants Texas to be good because they're such a big brand. But in my opinion, I don't think Texas is back. I don't even know that Steve Sarkisian's the right guy to bring them back. I thought they should have given Tom Herman more of a chance. But that's just it. You got a fan base that's going to be really, really impatient because
Always.
they think you should win every game.
Well, they also
And-
don't accept the fact that most of their players get taken out of state from SEC teams, and that's just
Well,
happen.
a lot of them do. And Michigan gets Texas players too. Now, Texas is a big state and they got a lot of players, no doubt. But, and they'll have these great recruiting classes and their facilities are impeccable. And,
Okay,
they
so
pay their coaches all this money and,
so take out the Vince Young years and the rookie Williams years. When have they been dominant in those decades? Because I don't remember them being that good.
Since those times, they haven't. Now, Texas was really, really good a long time ago, before you were born, when I was a kid. At that time, it was the Big Eight, and it was them, Oklahoma, and Nebraska. Those were 3 really, really
Oklahoma
good
used to
teams.
be a little bit of a powerhouse too. But I mean, like, it just, and again, I know you said their fan base wants them to be good, all that, but it really does feel like we're hanging on to something that's not there right now. And I say that as someone who's experienced it. Like, I don't think Texas is that good. I think
Don't
there's a
either.
lot of that hype that shouldn't be there, and it's not warranted. And I think it's people living a past glory, thinking their team should be ranked. And the reason I feel like I can say that without tons of bias is because I felt that way about Michigan, and I feel that way a lot of times about Notre Dame as well, who Michigan played a lot. There was a decade recently where Michigan sucked, and we'd get ranked during the season. And it's like, guys, you're ranking our name, not our team.
It's the brand.
Yeah.
Everybody wants them to be good. And you're You're 100% right. I agree with you 100%. And it's the brand. Everybody wanted Michigan to be good, and everybody was wanting them to be good so bad that they weren't really looking at them legit.
You're almost like trying to pump them up on TV to hope they pull off an upset.
And I feel like Texas does that most years. I really do.
I feel like Notre Dame's been that way recently.
Oh, for sure. But Michigan's back. Texas isn't. Michigan's back.
And
Texas
the scary thing for me about Michigan, though, is we're back in a power dominant team. But because we don't clap people in the convincing manner that a dominant team should, I feel like most Michigan faithful, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's like, yeah, we're back, but boy, I don't know if we want to play one of the other big bad teams. Like, because we don't handle things like we should.
I don't think if you said we had to play Georgia, I think the result would be similar to what it was last year. I think they'd kick our ass. I do. I don't think I think
our defense is better, but I don't think we'd score.
I think Ohio State, I still have hope that we can play with Ohio State. I really do. I really do. Our brand of football is different, no question. It's grinding, but it is impose your will. I mean, and most of the time we
set up. And that's the part as a Michigan fan that it's frustrating to watch because you worry about someone who is explosive, like an Ohio State or like Georgia. It's like they're one of those teams that if they get out in front, they don't look back. They just run your ass over. And with Michigan, I mean, I was looking at a stat line the other day I saw during their game. They're outscoring opponents 100-3 in the third quarter for the whole season. But half the time we barely score in the first half.
Well, and I think honestly, Tennessee would give us fits.
I don't think we could keep up with them. I think they wear us down.
They're very explosive. But anyway, seeing that you're talking about Michigan, it gives me a segue in to talk about a former Michigan guy that I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
The Lions won yesterday. They've won 2 in a row. They won in Chicago. Justin Fields, ran for like 147 and threw for 167. But the Lions were down 14 points and came back and won that game. So you give them credit for that.
Do you think Justin Fields is a pro quarterback?
I do. I mean, in today's game, I do. I think he's got a long way to go on decision making. He threw a pick 6 yesterday, and Okudah got the pick 6. That was awesome. But Fields threw a ball he never should have thrown. And Okudah picked it and took it 20 yards to the house. So he's got a lot to learn. He is a hell of an athlete. He really is. But he's got a lot to learn throwing the ball. But my thing about Chris Hutchinson, and I know we talked about him. He was the 2nd overall pick. Okay, here's a guy. His dad was an All-American. His dad was a great college player, never played in the pros. He was small for a D tackle. But he grew up here. He grew up in Plymouth. He went to Dearborn Divine Child. He played at the University of Michigan where his dad played. And then he got drafted by the Lions. And by the way, he wanted to get drafted by the Lions. So he spent his whole football career in Michigan, which is kind of cool. But I watched him yesterday. He had a sack. He had 8 tackles, 1 for loss. You better bring your chin strap when you line up against that guy. That's all I got to say. There may be guys that are more physically imposing than him. They may be stronger. They may be quicker. Whatever way of physical way, there's guys out there that are better than him. Nobody, and I mean nobody, has a better motor. I don't care who you are. And I think him playing against Penei Sewell every day in practice is helping both of them because Hutch does not take plays off. You're getting all he's got every time.
Well, and he's built with the tools, right? So I mean, his dad was Chris, right?
Yeah, Aiden.
Aiden's the one for the Lions, but his dad was Chris.
Chris.
I
Yes.
don't know what Chris's size was or what his build was, but Aiden, he's got a very interesting build in which it gives him the tools, in my opinion, to be the perfect terrorizer at a defensive end position. And it's not only is he, as solid as can be, I mean, probably pound for pound when it comes to using all your stability muscles and everything else, one of the stronger players out there. There are bigger, stronger people, but I don't think his body has a weak point that can be beat. Also, very tall. Pretty
he's
good speed.
6'6". He's 6'6" and he's about 260.
Yeah, pretty good speed for his size.
Yep.
But the biggest thing to me that makes defensive ends a nightmare, he's got a very long reach and he's not barrel chested. Although he is jacked, his body goes fairly straight down. So it's hard for linemen to get their hands on him, and he's got the length to keep them at bay. And when you start ripping, hooking, swimming to get around a lineman and you are going all out every play because you're a high motor player, it just takes one flinch, one hesitation from one of those big linemen, and he's got under you, he's bull rushed you, he's swum around you, whatever the case is. But it's like he's got the tools to say, I'm not going to let you touch me, and I'm going to get around you. And by the way, if you touch me, I'm going to put my hands up and jump, and now your QB can't see shit.
He's a really, really smart player. His dad's a doctor at Beaumont. I mean, he has been for years. Now, his dad, and I'm guessing here, because it was a long time ago, but he was an All-American at Michigan, a D tackle. I would guess he was 6'1", maybe 6'2", but I would say 6'1", and probably 275, maybe 280 when he played. But he wasn't big enough to be a D tackle in the pros. He went to 2 weeks of training camp with the Cleveland Browns, I believe. He was undrafted, so he went there as a free agent. I think he got some kind of a staph infection. And he just said, you know what? I'm enrolling in med school. And he's a doctor at Beaumont, and he's an ER doctor at
That's
Beaumont,
pretty
and
cool.
he has been for years.
That's pretty cool.
But Hutch is, some Pro Football Focus or one of those, and it was a credible, it was a credible ranking system. They ranked the rookies this year, and I don't remember the ones that were ahead of Hutchinson, but they ranked him 8th. Well, as Hutch gets more help, and I think this Pascal kid, I think, is going to help. Okwara, Julian, had the best game as a Lion yesterday. He had 2 sacks. And so as he gets some help, Rodrigo didn't play. We're banged up in the secondary all over the place, and we're not a good team. Our roster is not loaded. But as he gets some help, I think he's going to get better and better, because the best thing about him is his motor. And that's fun to watch.
I don't think he's at his full strength either. And obviously he's in incredible shape, but I know you and I have had private conversations about this before, when I talk about exercise and all these things. And it's like your body will go through metabolic changes based off of the work and activity you do consistently for years. And so with someone like Hutchinson, he's got the motor, he's got the skills, he's got the body, but it's almost like, some people call it like dad strength or whatever, or like when you look at a power lifter and they have the power keg, the belly, it actually does give them more strength. And so now that he's at the highest level, and he's not going to play some teams where he kicks the shit out of that lineman and others because they're all the best players in the world. He's going to be pushing around guys that are bigger, stronger, faster than he's ever done before. And the more he continues to do that, the stronger his body's going to develop in that specific way. And when you get someone with that skill set and that motor, I know I've said it before, but I think that's when you see Aiden Hutchinson turn into potentially a more physically gifted version of Jared Allen. And I think that's when he starts to become a nightmare. It's not year one, although he's very good. It might be 3 or 4, but his body's going to develop that core strength to be able to shed off a giant man because it's changing physically to allow him to do so. And I'm excited to watch him do that, because when a player truly earns it, like he has, I think that's one of the most exciting things in sports.
I think you're right. I think the Jared Allen comparison is physically and effort is that's a really good comparison. But when you see a guy, and again, because he's a local guy and he's got all these local ties, I can't help but watch him. I mean, I will. Lots of times I'll record the games, and even if I watch them, then I'll go back so I can watch individual plays. And I'll watch Hutch a lot. And you know what? That son of a gun, he's a smart player for sure, but he doesn't stop. And I know you can teach that, but it's hard to teach that. And when somebody has that and then they've got gifts, that's that you got a pretty serious package right there. I mean, that's I'll take a bunch of those guys.
They showed it in their Hard Knocks. It's like he does that in practice, and that to me is the biggest thing. It's like, if you've got a guy with so much juice, so much competitive spirit, that he's going to go play after play after play and practice to where he looks like he's physically going to pass out, cramp up, whatever, he's going to have a lot more rest in game time than he has in practice. So when you continuously do that, and you almost like breed that mentality by having the coach that you have, and it reinforces a player like Aiden, when he gets there on game day and this starts to kick in, and future seasons to come, not just this year, I really do think you're creating this monster where it's like there's so many breaks, TV timeouts, regular timeouts, official reviews, everything else in a game, that it's like, I don't know that this guy's going to get winded.
Well, it just, to me, it makes it really fun to watch, and especially with all the local ties, because he
Absolutely.
does have gifts. You're 100% right. He's got build, he's got gifts, and he's got desire. And I think that breeds desire. Like, I think that's a really good guy to have on your team. It's good to have effort guys
Perfect
on
for
your
the
team.
locker room
But
too.
when you got an effort guy who's good, and he is good, and I think he's going to be really good. Again, the more help he gets, the better he's going to get. But when you have all that, and the effort, to me, is key. When you have all that, it's just really fun to watch. Yeah, I know we're getting close on time.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about a movie because we talked about it last week. Are you okay with that?
Yep.
Well, I think I don't know if I know you and I talked about it a little bit off the air, and I know you haven't seen this movie. I just looked it up. I was wrong about the year. The movie was made in 1990, but it's a Coen Brothers movie. Coen Brothers did Raising Arizona, There Will Be Blood, The Man Who Wasn't There. I mean, they make a lot of movies that have dark sides to them. Raising Arizona being I mean, it even had a dark side, and it was a comedy. Um, but Miller's Crossing is set in 1930s Chicago. It's about the Irish mob, and there's some fantastic actors in that movie. It's got a great cast. It has Gabriel Byrne, who I really like. Albert Finney's in it. John Turturro is in it. Steve Buscemi is in it, and they almost always play weird characters. Both of those guys, they do in this movie. but it's about the Irish mob in Chicago and the control of social clubs, the liquor business, all that, and the competition between Italian mobs and Irish mobs. Marcia Gay Harden, who I don't know if you recognize that name, but
I do
she
not.
played the spoiled daughter in Meet Joe Black, which I know you like that movie. She
Hmm.
was the spoiled daughter, the older one. That's Marcia Gay Harden. It's a great movie. I know it's available on different streaming services. Um, the music I think is fantastic. It's a period piece. I mean, it's set in the 30s, so it's old cars. It's, you know, the suit, the attire of the day. It's the cop mentality of the day. But, that's definitely in my top 10. And like I said, the cast is impeccable and very well known actors and actresses. And I just, that's one of my, if you haven't seen that movie, I urge you to watch it. Again, the music is fantastic. It's, and I think, I'm sure they over dramatize as everybody does, but I'd like to think a lot of the things that this movie, shows actually happened in some way, shape, or form. So,
Is there a main incident or focus that the movie kind of stems around?
well, Gabriel Byrne is the main actor, and it's he's dealing with his internal struggles. He's dealing with alcoholism. He's got a gambling problem, and he loses a lot. He's the right hand man to the head Irish guy in Chicago, and the guy loves him. I mean, he's his right hand man. He's his consigliere. He's his counsel. And Gabriel Byrne is, you know, screwing around with this girl who is this guy's girlfriend.
Oh boy.
Uh, and Albert Finney, who is a great actor, and he's older. I mean, this girl is I think she's a prostitute actually. But it's like, again, this was all about an era of social clubs. So you're taking a Wild West saloon that had the saloon girls. Well, every social club had girls working there, and some of them I think were for regular hire, and some of them weren't. Some of them were just friends. And I think in the movie she is a prostitute, but she's also Albert Finney's girlfriend. And Gabriel Byrne, who's this great Irish actor, he's got a fantastic voice. Uh, he's the right hand guy to this head mob guy, and he's also fooling around with his girlfriend. And so he's got multiple issues. He's got
It
drinking,
sounds
he's
like a
got gambling,
troublemaker.
he's got this turmoil because of the relationship, and he it's a really and it's dark, man. There's some dark stuff in there, but it has a great soundtrack. And I would just, if you haven't seen it, it's one of my all-time favorites. I'd highly
Is
recommend
it
it.
filmed dark, like a noir style?
A little bit. I not super dark, but a little bit. It's not as bright as it could be, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's
That
almost like
that
they put a
usually adds to
filter
it.
on. It's almost like they have a filtered lens on all the cameras
Yeah.
because it gives
We're
that
not talking
appearance.
Sin City, but like maybe the Untouchables or something where like it's just
Yes, yeah,
tinted.
kinda, yeah. Well, it's the same era. Actually, the same story. Only it's Italian mob that Untouchables is about. But it's, I would say that no, there's the central character, and then there's a whole lot that goes on around him. Again, with all of his issues, and then everybody in the show has issues. Everybody's fighting something, and I just again, the soundtrack I just love it. It's fantastic, and it's a little bit dark. Coen Brothers movies can be like that, and it is. But it's one of my all-time favorites, and just an old guy making a recommendation. If you haven't seen it, Invest the 2 hours. I would be surprised if you didn't. If you really like movies, I'd be surprised if you didn't find it worth it.
Sounds good to me. I do. Next episode, we definitely should talk about Meet Joe Black, though. I heard you reference a character from that, and I think that's a phenomenal movie with an incredible premise. So I think that would be one that we could both talk about.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I brought it up. I knew you'd remember that girl, but I also knew you'd probably want to talk about it.
Yeah, it's a very good movie.
And if we run out of that, we can talk about dollar store jerky.
Yes, we can. Dog treats. Good old stuff. So it keeps you healthy and makes you live longer, right, Dad? Well, anyways.
Keep a good hacksaw handy.
Well, anyways, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. But Big Dog, shout out to you for bringing up the Bruins topic for us to talk about and commenting on our videos. Everyone else, we encourage you to comment on those. We'd love to hear your thoughts or any questions that you have. Any comments on the time or the structure of this podcast would be great. We appreciate all of your guys' input and definitely could always use more topics to talk about. We look forward to seeing you guys again. So like, share, subscribe, and as always, be safe, be smart, make good choices, and peace out. Love you, Dad.
Take care, buddy. I love you.
I don't ever want to be alone. I don't really ever feel at home. On my own, in the zone. That's the only way I know. Feeling low, about to blow back up. Here I never let the doubt creep in. Gotta pop a couple more aspirin. I don't think I'll ever let you in. Easier to break it off as friends. I don't really understand myself. I don't really understand, need help. I don't wanna be left on the shelf. Couldn't even hear me if I yelled. It's so cold outside. I'm alone, I'm alright. It's so cold outside. I'm alone, I'm alright. It's so cold. Break down, always feel like I could break now, but I never let it take me to that place now. I won't ever let my thoughts get away now. I got better things to do, picking fate now. I just wanna be the best, call me great now. I don't know if I'm okay or insane now. I remember better days on the playground, hoping I can find my way even when I'm feeling down. I fight, even when I don't know what is right. I'ma pick a side, and I'ma take pride. I will decide my fate, and I will never let them tell me who I am. If you try to shape me, I'll be damned. Planet on the ground is where I stand. Never give up, that was always the plan. It's so cold.